Okay? Okay. Good morning, everyone. I almost said good evening. I'm also used to our evening times. Our topic today, as we can see, can we avoid suffering? Suffering is something that I do not need at this moment to define to any of you, because unfortunately it is something that we all go through life. It doesn't matter how old we are. If we are young, we are worried or we suffer because we have a test in school that's difficult. If we are, teenagers, it's because that girl is not looking at me or that boy. If we are at a certain age, we will worry about our work, whether we're going to get a good job or not. And all of these things are things that actually make us suffer because it's uncertainty, are things that we depend on, and they are going to determine our future. If we are old, of course, every day is a different pain in our body, a different symptom, and so we are always struggling. Our main objective here today is not only to understand suffering and certain challenges and difficulties that we go through life, but to see in a way if there is any manner that we can avoid it, that we can reduce our suffering, and most importantly is for us to start to look at suffering from a different perspective. So let's start thinking about this statement that we find in one of the books of the Bible. Happiness is not of this world. Many people are familiar with this statement, some not so quite. But this is a statement that comes to us as a stigma. Since we have that in the Bible, and we use it so often, and many philosophical line of thinking, the philosophies actually, they, oh, thank you. Yeah. What would I do without my husband? Okay. Since we are young, we start to be brainwashed by concepts like that. I cannot be happy because happiness is not of this world. It's such a strong statement. And then we start from, depending on the line of philosophies or religions that we go through, we start each time more to believe that in a way we do not deserve to be happy on this earth. And even if we want to be happy on this earth, I mean, this is powerful. So basically, what we have to do, start doing, is to erase all these concepts that we have. Jesus told us that he would be giving us peace, but not as the world can give to us. How can we understand that? And putting together these two statements. Happiness is not of this world, but I can give you peace, but not the one that the world gives. One thing that we realize, the more we start studying and meditating about the concepts that we are little by little embracing from Spiritism and other philosophies as well, we begin to understand that if happiness is not of this world, maybe it is because I'm looking for happiness in things that are not supposed or that have no way of making me happy. And if we combine these two, I can give you peace but not as the world gives to you, we can start to realize that what Jesus is telling us here is that we can have peace, we can have happiness, but not searching in places that we are used to search so far. In this country, the first time that someone touched, or it was touched, the necessity of happiness, and of course when we talk about suffering, it's impossible not to talk about happiness, because to us, it doesn't matter how, the dictionaries define suffering. To us, what is suffering? Is lack of happiness. So they are both walking hand in hand. Either I am happy or I am miserable. There is no middle ground. So that's why we will be touching both points here, suffering and happiness. And so it says that the necessity of happiness here was formally introduced. Can you imagine that? Only in the 18th century. Before that, people were not even, I think life was so difficult. If we complain about today, what about, centuries ago? And when exactly Thomas Jefferson even defined what would be a state of happiness to him, which would be represent not to have any physical pain or a troubled mind, any worries that we can take in our lives. But how everything started? How come we today have it in us so strongly this idea that we cannot be happy in this world, that yes, we have to suffer, that is my karma, or whatever designation we wanted to give. Everything started with the origin of sin and suffering, with the original sin. At least when we talk about organized religions. So the story of Adam and Eve as forming the basis of the original sin is held as true by many branches of Christianity even today. And even those that do not actually say, oh, I'm a religious person, or I attend church or any other temple, this is a concept that's universal. It's so widespread in our world. And so we have this idea that because, even if we do not believe, it doesn't matter whether we believe in Adam and Eve. We as a Spiritists, we don't. I mean, we know that this makes no sense, and we are here studying a philosophy that is pure reason. But what we have to remember is at the same time that we are talking about a doctrine or a philosophy, actually, that disseminate the thinking of rational thinking, at the same time we cannot avoid to remember that we've been living many lifetimes. And in our previous existences, well, for how many of them we actually embraced this concept so strongly. And so, I mean, even if we do not remember in the present life, this is so much engraved in us, the idea of sin, of being, from that point on, condemned by God to suffer because we sin. And we name our sins. And we think about how if I do something wrong, I'm going to be spending the rest of my spiritual life in hell. And so we've been brainwashed for so many incarnations. And only now is when we are beginning to actually exercising our free will and our ability to reason, not fearing any retaliation from organized institutions, and begin to understand that this doesn't make sense. The idea of a God that is totally vengeful, that, that does not forgive us. And I mean, putting all together the many lives, the original sin, the analyzing us, even if we don't practice what we should, and it's not so easy, that everyday exercise of meditating and thinking about what we did, analyzing, a self-analysis of our behavior, we know that we are in the category of, sinners. That has been our way of thinking so far. And so we cannot, according to our way of thinking until now, escape from the vengeance of God. And if I'm bad, and God condemns my sin, I deserve to suffer. This is what we have to erase, because this is no longer should be a way of thinking, especially for us as Spiritists. And that's God. God is so bad. Sorry about that, not bad. But God is so vengeful, because God is good, even if we think that he has vengeance. But he has to come after the humankind and avenge and wrathful and taking vengeance, again reserves wrath, or will not by no means leave the guilt unpunished. I remember, and I imagine that some of you may have been through this experience as well, when we went not so long ago, of course, through the tsunamis, and even the hurricane in New Orleans. How many people I heard saying, well, those were sinner places. They had children prostitution and lots of drugs, and they tried to imply that the natural phenomena that occurred there was in a way the wrath of God. So we see how this is so strongly still present in ourselves. And if all of that was not enough, to wrap up all of that, all the need of God for blood, he needed his son to come and to pay for our sins. And this is something that we have been hearing and accepting and embracing for so many incarnations, for so many centuries. So the idea that God would even send a pure spirit like Jesus to suffer because he needs blood to pay for the sins of humankind. But is this exactly what we think? This is how we see God? No. In Spiritism, we don't see God like that. Like, I need to suffer, I deserve to be punished. We see God as constantly giving us opportunity to learn, to experience, and to grow through our own free will, through the opportunities that we will be having in this lifetime. So to us, we only see and we only accept the idea of a loving God. Why is it so important for us to understand this difference between the vengeful God and the loving God? Because it's in the root of our acceptance and sometimes even looking for suffering. Because our subconscious says to us that we are not good, that we commit mistakes, and therefore, from all of this brainwashed and experience that we have throughout time, we accept that, there is no other way for me but to suffer. So it's time for us to rid ourselves from that and to start embracing this idea and the understanding of a loving God, that it was actually the idea that Jesus brought to us. And an idea that is not new. Even in the Bible, we see in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, how some of the passages presented God as being loving, as being patient, as being the one that cares for us. And there, I found this in the Jeremiah that I thought was so beautiful. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. So why did we lose that throughout time and just embrace it, the concept of suffering, of deserving to go through all that? So why then do we suffer? Because of how we are going to behave. We know and we understand through Spiritism that we have what is called free will. That I can choose live with hate or love, anger, joy, frustration or peace. So this is my choice. Which side am I going to be? Where am I going to be positioning myself? And in the Gospel according to Spiritism, we have in chapter 5 a very enlightening message, or some messages, that talks to us about the present day afflictions and the past cause of afflictions. And showing basically that if we are going through vicissitudes in life, it is because there is a cause. And if we do believe in God, in a just God and fair God, that this cause must be also just. Oh, this only should be here. This is not the one that I was looking for. The concept of Benjamin Franklin, I'll have to bring to you later. So it tells us that the past cause of afflictions, there are things that we go in life that we cannot understand. So we can understand this as being a result of behaviors, of actions that we had in previous existence. And Chico Xavier tells us that we cannot change our past, but we can definitely work for a better future. What is very important to us, understanding the concepts of Spiritism, understanding reincarnation, and understanding why we are here on earth, it is to understand as well, and this comes in this new us before suffering, is that I cannot change the past. There is no reason for me to be stuck and in things that now I don't have control. But I can be active in how am I going to be behaving or working from now on. I am capable of determining my present life and my future existence. When we talk about present cause, the statement from Benjamin Franklin was pretty much the one that we have in the Gospel according to Spiritism, where it says that we are in control, and in a way we have much more difficulties and what we call suffering in this life due to our present behavior than actually to past causes. We normally tend to say, oh, especially when we are spiritists, we like to blame things. We've been accustomed throughout time to blame someone. Up to now, we blame Adam and Eve. Why did they have to eat that fruit, the apple? You know, if they hadn't had the apple, I would be happy. I would be living in paradise. So we love to blame. We love to blame. And when we become spiritists, we have to find someone to blame as well. So we blame the spirits. Oh, I must be having this reaction because there is an obsessor that I'm suffering from a spiritual attachment. Or we blame people. And so now I can blame all the miseries that happened to my life to karma. Because in a way we feel that we are not responsible for that. Because, like, you know, we cannot change the past. But it was we that did. Okay, let's say, well, I can blame karma, that in other words is me, because it was I that was actually doing these bad things. But we have to start taking responsibility of our actions and start understanding that if we are blaming karma, it's not a third person. It's ourselves. Like karma, the way we understand, will only come after us if we did something wrong, or if we've committed some bad action, let's say. So in the present existence, many times we try to excuse ourselves, the difficulties, the challenges, and the suffering that we go through, saying, well, this must be the result of a previous existence. Thank God we now believe in a previous existence, right? Another thing that we can blame off, we have no control of that, so in a way we feel that it's not our fault. And what we see in the gospel, and what Benjamin Franklin also says, is that, you know, many of this distress that we have in the present life is actually the consequence of what we are doing now. But of course, because we don't use our time to self-enlightenment, to analyzing our behaviors, we don't see what we are doing, and then we try to blame anything else. Benjamin Franklin says that the majority of the cause of affliction that we have is for, you know, wishes that were fulfilled. Because we don't know, we have to be careful what we wish for. Sometimes we go after things and that we believe it's going to make us happy and actually only bring us suffering. So we will be going through all of that. So we understand in a way that we are responsible for our actions. And we will be leaving this situation here according to what comes from us. You know, it will come back to us as a result of our behavior. And understanding the karma, we see here we actually basically use this slide for just to, if there was someone that are not familiar with the concept of karma, the effects of all deeds create past, present, and future experiences, thus making one responsible for one's own life and the pain and joy it brings to others. So, if we sow goodness, we will reap goodness. If we sow evil, we will reap evil. And we see, this is another thing that is very, really, truly amazing. How truth exists from the beginning of times, and how it is the same for any philosophy that comes to this. This is a concept that we learn from Christianity, that we talk in Spiritism, and that is old, and that comes from the Vedas, that it's much prior to even the coming of Jesus to earth. So we see how those some concepts are actually the eternal truth, right? So how can we change all of that in terms of suffering? And the karma lies in intelligent action. So we are now going to reason, like, okay, if my actions are going to bring a consequence, and I'm in control of that, what would be the best way for me to behave? Do I want to get myself in trouble? For myself, not for, because of others that live around. For us, do I want to bring to me, to live dangerously, or to bring to me things that I may be risking? Or I would actually cross this maybe. We will be, because what we sow is what we reap. And so it's very important for us to start embracing this concept of intelligent action. With Vanessa, we have been studying a lot the concept of intelligent sleep. Now we have to think about, well, when I'm not asleep, I'm in action. Let's exercise the concept of intelligent action, which is so important in our lives. Because I do have choices. I do have the possibility of, even when I am living a situation that my first impulse will be to retaliate, of coming through this way. Hey, wait a minute. What am I going to gain from that? I will just vent, and because of that, I will gather for me at least bad vibes from the person, which is never good to have around us, if not something more serious. So we are in this position that we can actually choose what we are going to be doing. In terms of Spiritism, this karma, we normally use the terminology of the law of cause and effect, and we are encouraged actually before reincarnation to come and to make amends. Because we cannot just, like the image says here, put everything under the rug and make believe that, those actions do not exist. And here, in case you think that this is the God looking at us, no, this is our conscience. This is ourselves, actually. We cannot escape from our own selves in terms of, if we are thinking that we are deceiving others. We may be deceiving others, but we cannot deceive our conscience and our, and ourselves. So according to Joana de Angelis, in this way, when we are going through difficulties, challenges, I like to use challenges more than suffering, because many times I think we use and abuse of the word suffering. Everything that is not according to what we wish for, we say it's suffering, it is painful, it's horrible. And sometimes it's just challenges that we have actually to exercise our intelligence and to grow spiritually speaking. So in this case, with all the reap and sow and etc., we see, and Joana de Angelis tells us, that there are no mistakes in the divine law. So therefore, we should stop complaining and start using an intelligent action. Instead of blame everything else, everyone else, now the spirits or the karma or God or whoever we are, Adam and Eve, we should be actually analyzing and see how we can rid ourselves from unnecessary suffering and difficulties in our lives. But normally what we do, we stay and we remain in a very passive attitude. And we expect that everything else, even when we come to the Spiritist Center, we come here because we have a heavy burden in our shoulders. And then we vent all of that to the the practitioners of the Spiritist Center, and we expect that they will solve all our problems. Here, take my load. We put there in the box, like there was an invisible box here. My load's here. Now it's your responsibility. It's not mine anymore. Because we are always expecting for others to take actions that it's only in our hands. And Confucius said something, I love this. When the first time I laid my eyes on this phrase, it stayed with me forever. It's easier to light a candle than to curse darkness. How we love to complain, right? And Joanna de Angeli said, there are no divine mistakes. We do that so much. How many times we are going through difficult situations in life and we pick up the phone to talk to a friend and we just complain. We don't even let the friend say anything. And vent everything. And we don't want to hear. We don't want people to even to come to solutions or to give solutions. Instead of calling and say, you know what, I'm going through terrible times. Since I heard that two heads, two minds, may reach solutions better than just one, do you want to, brainstorm with me to see if there is a way of me lighting a candle and, getting rid of the situation? But we like this position of being miserable, of people feeling, sorry and pity for us. Oh, poor her, poor him is suffering. Oh, come here. And then we care and, tap on the shoulder instead of intelligent action, acting in a way that we can be rid of this problem. So we have this choice. But even when we are already conscious of all of that, and we are taking action, the intelligent action, to go through, to live in a better way, sometimes we will still be visited by illnesses or any other suffering. And then we'll say, well, okay, I'm doing everything by the book, right? And I'm still suffering. What is that? Why is this happening to me? So we know that before we reincarnate, we make an agreement. There is a whole study about how we are going to be, gathering lessons that are very important for us to learn in a lifetime. And sometimes certain difficult situations, challenging situations, are the only way that we can actually learn a precious lesson. Because we know that our perispirit is the one that is going to determine our future existence. So our spiritual body will be reflecting everything that we have. So we cannot erase completely from our perispirit the mold of a new physical body, the problems that we have been accumulating for so many age, so many time. And we see here in the, according to the studies of the book, not only the book Nosso Lar, but the books from the series of books from the spirit André Luiz through the medium Chico Xavier, we have here, the first one is the city of Nosso Lar, and they show here depicting the image of what a reincarnation preparation center looks like in the spirit world, and how here they are actually the spirit to be born again, to reincarnate, is together with some mentors analyzing, what it's going to be a better condition for a physical life. And in this case, even when we see this black dot there are going to be certain anomalies in the GI tract that may become an ulcer in the future. What is very interesting here is that, it will become, or I should have used it, may become. Because sometimes, even when we have the genies, even when we have the spiritual, let's call it spiritual genes, depending on what we do and how we use the intelligent action, we will not have an ulcer. Or we may have it even earlier than it was predicted, according to our action. So there is no determinism in certain situations. They will say, you know what, you tend to be, let's say, to eat in a bad way, too much, or drink too much, and if you do not find a balance for that in this future life, this is going to be a blessing for you, because it's going to prevent you to continue following with the same habit. But if you find the balance, then you don't need someone to remind you, hey, watch out. So this is a way that we have already of avoiding suffering and difficulties in our lives, even when it was all prepared, because it is still in our hands to determine whether it's going to come or not. So André Luiz says in this book, Evolution into Worlds, as a result of moral decline, there will be damage in the psychosomatic hemisphere or perispirit, and this in turn will result in disharmony in the somatic hemisphere, causing suffering, like we were seeing before, that seems that is a result of behaviors, past behaviors that we had. Oops. The Spiritist Joana de Angelis tells us that suffering is transitory, being a result of energy imbalance, but once directed towards goodness and love, the cause for imbalances cease, making it possible to reach enlightenment and fullness, and therefore full health, which is the human being's destiny given by the Creator. Divaldo Franco tells us a case that is very interesting. He said that he had a friend that would once came to him and complaining that she was really, really worried because everything in her life was magnificent. Everything was too good to be true. And because everything was too good to be true, and because she was a Spiritist, or better yet, she thought she was a Spiritist and understood completely the teachings of Spiritism, she said, well, in the Spiritism, I know that I live at previous incarnation, that I'm here to suffer and to pay or to make amends, and I have the karma, and I have to do something, and happiness is not of this world, and blah, 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 blah. So her life was excellent, everything was good. There was no other way than to expect that something bad was going to happen, because happiness is not of this world. I have to suffer. I have to make amends. I did something bad in the past. So all of that is actually what we are intending to do here. Erase this concept. It's wrong. We don't need to be there. We don't need to go there. Even when we have, like we said, the spiritual genes, it is still in our hands at least to minimize the effects of things that may happen to us physically, in our physical body or spiritual body. So she came to him and complaining and said, Divaldo, I don't know what to do because, I know I'm a Spiritist. I understand all of that. And then he thought and meditated for a minute and he said, you know what? So I do have an advice for you. So what I can tell you is the following. Why don't you be happy today and be miserable tomorrow? She was, because of her behavior, eliminating the possibility of living happiness while she could. Because she was suffering beforehand just by imagining what could have come to her. And so he said, okay, be happy today and suffer when suffering comes. What else can you do? And this is something that we have to actually put in our lives and to understand that, again, in this new concept that we have. Why me? Why am I suffering? I read a few or I heard in a lecture, and another thing that I really thought was very interesting. We always question, why me when we are suffering? And why God? Why me? We never question God when we are having, happiness, everything good is happening to us. We never say, why me, God? Why, I won the lotto. We never say that, right? We just complain when things are not going too well. Many times, in spite of all this understanding that we may have, it's impossible for us to understand the nuances of our suffering and the necessity that we have of certain things and challenges actually to come to us. We will not find an answer. We will not understand. But since there is no mistake in the divine law, and many things, what I understand and I see in this life as being bad is not necessarily bad, we just have to go through that and to do, the best that we can. Another thing that we have to be very worried in terms of spiritism and very conscientious is because of this understanding that we have of law of cause and effect, we tend to judge people, saying, okay, you are suffering because you were bad. It's something from a previous incarnation. So, you know what? Dishing out guilt and shame does not help a sick person become well. So even if, we are doing whatever we can to prevent this suffering, illness, etc., but then we go through that, it's not in our hands, our task, to go to the person and say, well, we don't need to wedge. I mean, the person is suffering already, and instead of saying, oh, come here, I'm going to comfort you, I'm going to, think, how can I help you? And we will say, well, it's karma. You did, now, it's the law. Even when if we believe that, and if we have this understanding, this should never be our behavior before someone that is suffering. We should always be doing what we have in our best to console and to comfort. This week, actually, we had someone that attends our healing treatment, and she came very distressed because a loving person from her family was in the ICU, right? Internal ICU in the hospital. Because I was thinking in the other translation, and in a very bad situation. And we could see, while we were doing the prayers for the person, we could see that the person was actually in very, very, very bad shape. But what could we say, And even seeing that the person was in a very bad shape, it doesn't mean that this is it, that the time of the person was over. And then we told her, even when we have all the indications that the case is very, very serious, there is nothing impossible for the Creator. And we never know when the time comes. Well, and then we prayed, etc. The following day she wrote to me that, as a miracle, everything was in control. The person was already released from the ICU and just was in the regular bed in the hospital. So we never know. I mean, we cannot pass judge and say, it's from the past, even because we have a very interesting case about that in the book Heaven and Hell. Is the chapter 8, where they talk about the story of a boy that is called Marcel. This boy, Marcel, I love this story. It makes me cry every time I read. He was abandoned. He was only in a house of assistance, and he had some disease that made him, feel terrible pains in his body. But everyone that lived around him was always amazed by his behavior, by by how he, being so young and going through such a distress, would actually still be capable of helping others in that house of assistance that he lived. And then the spirits go and tell us that the reason why he was going through that was actually to teach others how to cope with their suffering. So we cannot say and we cannot judge that if someone is going through a difficult time or is going through an illness, oh, it's karma, it's bad, and because you are bad. The person accepted that as a way of actually helping others and giving example to others. So, of course, continuing with the why me, we may have negative attitudes. It's only normal that in a way, as soon as we are in face of something that is difficult or even a bad diagnosis in terms of our illnesses, that we will be shocked and that we will be having this reaction or not understanding why things are going to happen to us, and even go through some of these states. It's normal. We are human beings still learning. But what can I do? Why should be my attitude from that point on? Do I descend into being absorbed into these negative attitudes? Or do I pull myself together and make every moment as rich, as funny, and as delightful as possible? Am I going to be closed in self-pity? Or am I going to open myself to loving connections? So it is our choice, and we can choose to be kind and positive, to connect with the high spirituality, becoming more disciplined, changing our attitudes and habits, and harnessing our spirituality. So those moments are very important for us. This is the spirit of Emmanuel. And there is a situation from Chico Xavier that it seems that Chico Xavier was going to a very, one of these life struggles, because even Francisco Xavier, he also lived on earth, and he suffered the difficulties that are present in our planet. And once he was going through some of that, and he started to talk to Emmanuel like, in a self-pity way, like, oh, why me? What should I do now? And then Emmanuel told him, well, what you're going through now is like the story of that man that the spirits came and gave him an umbrella. And then the spirits came and gave him a rainbow. And then the spirits came and gave him a raincoat. What the spirits were telling him? Wow, that was going to rain, right? But how to use and to apply all that material when rainy days come, it's up to the person. So far, we have been giving you a lot. A spiritual guide can be a good friend, but it will be neither be able to replace you in the fulfillment of your own duties, nor to remove you from the trials and experiences that are essential to your self-enlightenment. So at this moment is when it's very important for us to reflect and to meditate that by the fact that we are going through challenges, difficult times in life, it doesn't mean that we are abandoned by our spiritual guides, mentors, our family members, all of those that loves us and that are in the spirit world. It means that sometimes, this is what we need. This is the experience that we need. But it is so true that they haven't abandoned us, that they give us the tools for us to actually be capable of protecting ourselves as much as we can during these rainy days. There's another story from Divaldo Franco that is also interesting. Divaldo was, complaining because he was also, having these bad days. And then he called Joanna. He was working at the Spiritist Center up to, like 4 a.m., like he normally does, helping others and giving messages. And then he began to realize how many messages he was giving to actually comfort other people that were there in the audience. And then when he finished and he said, well, I'm suffering so much. My life is so bad. At this moment, this and this is happening to me. And then he started to complain to Joanna. Even Divaldo complained. And then he said, you know what, Joanna, you forgot about me. I was just thinking now, I'm going through all this stress. And, you've been here just giving messages of comfort to other people. And I'm realizing now that you have never, ever written a single word of comforting to me. None of your writings so far you wrote to me. And then she said, oh yeah, is this so? Okay, go grab a book in the bookshelf. Any book will do. And then he went there, he grabbed one book. And she said, well, open whatever page we want to open it. And then he opened. And then she said, well, now read. And then he started reading it, and it was, when going through difficult times, you should listen to the voice of the spirits, and you can do that to prevent, and you. And then when he finished, and he says, see, there is nothing for me. And then he just says, and who the you do you think we are talking about? The you. You, it's you. Everything that I write to you. If you print and send to others, it's your business, not mine. But everything that I wrote so far is always to you. So, we have this tendency of feeling unconsoled and abandoned. And we have to be sure that this is not so. And that we actually have to grab intelligent action and to use all which is in our power to overcome the situation. What can I gain from these situations? Well, patience, surrender, acceptance, humility, compassion for others, because when we suffer, we understand the suffering of others. We have time to meditate on questions. What is the meaning of life? How can I give my life more meaning? It's when we can more closely connect to God, to the spiritual guidance, to our guardian angel, to learn on forgiveness, to think and meditate about our negative behaviors, and to forgive ourselves. This is one of the major causes of suffering that we have. We do not allow ourselves to be forgiven. But it's not, I think that sometimes when we talk a lot about the need that we have to forgive and to learn forgiveness. And again, we always transfer that to others. And we forget that the first one that we need to learn to forgive is ourselves. Okay, we did things bad. We didn't know better. But I cannot stay in the past and not take action and start doing things in a different way now. I'm just learning now. So it's very important for us to do that as well. And this statement that I found from Martin Luther King Jr., well, sometimes only when it's dark enough we can see the stars. How true is that? When sometimes, we feel that we are abandoned, we do not have friends, and then we go to certain distress, and all of a sudden friends are bringing flowers and calling and staying by your side, and family, and then you start to meditate or revisit your life and think, you know what, I have this so stressful job, and just because I can have a tad bit of more money, and but I live in constant stress, and I could have something that I could earn a little less, but I would be having more happiness, more time, even to fulfill my spiritual inclinations. So it's when we stop and we start to think and we start to meditating about lives. And there's another phrase from Paul: for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. It is very difficult. It's very difficult because living on earth, we grab the material concept. I mean, we need to live here. We need to do and to take care of our business. It's okay. We never said it was not okay. But we have to start, re-educating ourselves and having the understanding that we are much more than just this material self that we are and that we see ourselves. That we are this immortal spirit that will be living, that has already lived and will be living many more opportunities and lives and experiences. And even the way we think about these challenges now, we have to revisit that again and see, well, okay, there are things that we cannot avoid. But even when we cannot avoid, if we complain a little less, and if we grab this people that loves us, that are near us, and say, well, you know what, I was planning to come here and using the whole tissue box that you have, just complaining about my life, but let's do something positive. Let's think, what can we do to minimize that? Do you think there's something that we can do, or how we will not burden as well others with our suffering, and we do that a lot, and how we can prevent ourselves from being much greater distress just by complaining and not accepting the reality of our lives. There is one thing that very silly, but I like to I will share with you. Have you realized, especially the women perhaps, how we are not happy with ourselves, with our physical selves? If we have straight hair, now it's not in fashion. I would love to have some, Giselle Bündchen's curls. That's so beautiful, right? And full hair. If we, if we have a few pounds more, if we have a few pounds less, we are never happy. So when I was like in my 20s, I would look at me and would criticize, of course, so many points, right, that I'm not happy with this area. I would like to change here and there. Then I reached 30, and then I said, well, I'm not happy here. Oh, if I had if I was like when I was in my 20s. And then I reached 40 already. And then of course, I'm not happy with what I see as well. And I'm wishing for what I was at 30s. I said, you know what? Now I learned my lesson. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to really be happy with what I am now, because 10 years from now, it's not be as good as it is right now. And wow, it's silly, but we do that so much, especially for the girls. You look, because, I wish my hair, I don't know. I mean, you're beautiful. We are in our best moment. We are in our best self at the moment. We're just growing old, and of course when you get old, so we should learn to enjoy and to appreciate what we are. And how much suffering we have just because, a little more hips, a little less, whatever, it's so silly. And people, there are people or girls that they are invited to party and they say, oh no, I cannot go to the party because I don't have a bad dress, or my hair, I have a bad hair day, what they like to say in this country. It's so silly. And it represents so much suffering to us. this is just one example, or like, you know, jealousy, all of this personality traits that we still have in terms of imperfection that actually weighs on us so much and makes us so miserable. And we are always comparing to others. I mean, we're not going to be the other. And again, we never know, you know, the life of others, how their lives are. And so we should actually start to understand, to accept ourselves as we are, to be happy with what we are. We are not saying here, no, don't go on a diet, don't dye your hair when you have gray hair. Do it. Be beautiful. But let us remember that we cannot go to extremes and to make ourselves miserable because of certain things. And this goes as well in terms, especially for us now. I think, you know, becoming a Spiritist and following a Spiritism, one of the most difficult things that I do think, at least for myself, it was like, you know, I see the light. I see what I can become, but I'm still not there. And it's sad. It's frustrating. I want to advance. I advance 1, 2 steps, and I come back 1. And I think that I'm strong enough, and then, you know, I fall. And because we already see, we already understand our potential. But we are still so much our old self from all this incarnation. So one thing, again, that we can do to avoid and to prevent this suffering, again, to forgive ourselves and to understand our limitations. And not to dismay when we are not to advance as fast as we would like to. Many people, they just give up because of these challenges that they will have. We should keep our focus on what is unseen, which is eternal. And what, you know, it is there that we don't know yet. We've never been there. Never been there. We have glimpses, we have an idea of what we can become and what it can be, but we have never been there. But there, whoo, we were there so much. So let's use this opportunity. Let's use all this knowledge that we have actually to bring happiness in the simple things that we have in our lives. Suffering, actually, if we are going to define it, it's a series of frustrations that we have. Sometimes it's not, you'll see a person that is so sad and you say, well, what is happening to you? Oh, nothing. Because really nothing is happening, but it's a series of small things that prevent us to be happy or to feel completely in a good situation. We have always the possibility of resorting to prayer, which is our best tool in terms of helping us to be inspired to what is the best action that we can do. And we don't need to use this prayer. I mean, we know that a prayer is just to elevate our thoughts to God and to talk to the good spirits that are with us and asking them from inspiration, for motivation, for guidance in our daily lives. And above all, if we really want to be completely sure that we can erase and eliminate any of these unfortunate mistakes that we have been committing so far, there is one thing that changes everything, is love and giving ourselves to others. In the small things, in the simple things, in being patient, in listening to others, and remembering that others' problems are never small. If the person thinks that it's a big deal, it is a big deal. Maybe not to us, but for the person is. And we have to be conscious of that. And we have to do our share and to do as much as we can in order to help. And there is this message about the footprints in the sand that is very beautiful, that this man analyzing his life after he passed it, and supposedly he's talking to Jesus, and he says that, he sees his life, the different phases of his life in these footprints in the sand, and he's always walking, and there is always a second pair of foot walking next to him. And then he realized that it comes to a point in his life that he was going through so much distress, so much suffering, it was so much to him, and he looked at surprise, and he only sees one footprint, it is said, and he said, "Well, how come, God, Jesus, I mean, this is when I needed you most, where were you?" And he says, and he answers to him, "It was during this time that I was carrying you in my lap." So I think the beauty of this message is for us to understand that if we are embracing so many concepts of Spiritism, especially sometimes the one that we are misguided in terms, like we were saying, in terms of suffering, of the wheel of life, the karma law of cause and effect, we should always remember that we are not alone. Even if we do not have physical people to be here for us and to help us in our distress, we have the assistance of the good spirits, always. Always. They are much more numerous than we can imagine. And if we ask for their assistance, and if we open ourselves to their assistance, and if we resort to prayer, there is no way we will be without help. That there will be not the presence of these spiritual beings in our lives. Even when we look at our night, the universe, we can you put the lights off just at this moment? The universe presents us with some amazing images that show us and attest to us the holiness and the presence of God. I don't know if you can see here, but what I see here is the profile of Jesus in this, even with the crown of thorns, and the bird, and the hair. I don't know if you can see as well the way I see it. But it is present everywhere. We would like to leave you with these thoughts, and to invite you all actually to reflect on yourselves and to start taking action in terms of what you can do with your lives, and remembering above all, if there is one fate in this earth, it's for us to be happy, it's for us to evolve, it's for us to become beautifully bright and not suffering, because God is love. I will not say above all, because it's pure love. And we are not here, we are not having this opportunity because we were bad and because we did something bad, and we are here to suffer and to pay. We are here to grow, spiritually speaking. We are here to start to visualize this splendid being that we can become, and to work for that, and to feel in our daily lives the presence of God and the presence of His love within ourselves. And even if we are going through suffering and stress, if we have this certainty, we will feel this presence and we will feel consoled. And I thank you so much for your attention. And I share with all of you the moments that we all have of pain and distress, but that we all have of this spiritual presence like we are having now. Thank you.
And now we have questions. We can give it to Jussara at the end, okay? So now we're going to take these moments and the inspiration we receive